Hello, Namaskar. Welcome back to my channel. I am Rishivad Gautam, data analyst and the founder of this channel. And in previous video, we have discussed about the basic of economics. Now, in this particular video, we will be discussing about the properties of demand response curve. So, a quick recap about the definition of demand response curve. So demand response curve was a function that describes how demand for a product varies as the function of its price. In that particular video, the key focus was single seller in a market, in a single market. And we have figured out that the relationship between the price and demand is inverse relationship. Example, demand for onions in the local market. At 20 rupees per kg, the demand will be high. Let's say example 1000 kgs per day. But when the price goes up, that is let's say 80 rupees per kg, the demand becomes lower. That is let's say 300 kgs per day. So now let's understand the four key properties. And the very first is non-negative. And these properties are for demand response curve, right? So the very first property is non-negative. That is, demand response curve cannot be negative because demand cannot be negative. And the curve will be continuous. Okay, demand changes smoothly with the price. So it will be continuous and also differentiable. That is, the curve will have a well-defined slope at every point, right? And about the slope, it will be downward sloping. That is, as price increases, the demand will decrease. A practical insight, these properties ensure that demand response curves are predictable and analyzable. So if we have these four properties, we can able to predict the demand and price and also able to analyze these. Now let's visualize these properties. So when we talk about non-negative, it means that the curve, the demand response curve, will always stay above the x-axis. And when we say continuous, it means that there will be no breaks or jumps in the curve. And same, the differentiable, the smooth curve with no sharp corners, right? No jumps, no sharp corners. And the last is downward sloping curve. That is, curve slopes downward from left to right. And how it will look like? So let's say we have a price on y-axis, quantity on x-axis. The curve will look like this. This curve is known as demand curve. So if you notice, it is non-negative, right? Everything is above x-axis. Also, it is continuous because there is no break or jump. Also, it is differentiable at each point because means there is always a slope at every point. And the slope will be downward sloping, right? From left to right, when we go, we can see a downward trend. Now, just quickly remember the demand function. So this is how our demand function was, where A is the maximum demand at price 0, or which we saying the market size, and B is the sensitivity, how price will affect the overall demand. So this property ensures that this function is smooth. Example, demand for rice. So the function look like this, 500 minus 10p, which can be interpreted as, let's say, at 30 rupees per kg, the demand will be D30, that is equals to 500 minus 10 into the P price, that is 30, which equals to 200 kgs. Means that at 30 rupees per kg, there will be a demand of 200 kgs of rice. Now, if we increase the price, let's say 50 rupees per kg, then the demand will be 0. That no one is going to buy at 50 rupees per kg. Now, let's talk about the key characteristics. And the very first characteristic was non-negative, which means that demand cannot be negative, which has an implication that it ensures realistic market behavior. That demand cannot go to negative, right? When we say about continuous, it says that the changes in demand will be smooth, which implicates that predictable market response. We can predict how market will respond. Then there is differentiable, which ensures that it enables precise elasticity calculation. That how sensitive is the demand with price. And at the last, downward sloping, which reflects the consumer behavior. That if price goes up, the demand will come down. Now, the practical insights here that these 4 properties are essential for accurate economic modeling and policy making. So, what are the key takeaways? The first is demand response curve are non-negative, continuous, differentiable, and downward sloping. Then, these properties are able to ensure that the behavior is realistic and analyzable. The mathematical representation captures these properties. And if we say a real world example, pricing strategies for business is one of the example of this demand response curve. Also, the government policies, also the consumer decision making, that consumer will able to buy on what price, right? I hope you understand this video. Thank you.